Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COASTER-net Update. We've got some breaking news tonight out of Austell, Georgia, where we've just learned that Six Flags Over Georgia will be closing down Georgia Cyclone on July 30th. For what reason is currently unknown, but I think a lot of us, our natural inclination is to jump right to the RMC, probably another Iron Horse project. Danny, what do you think about this?
Well, Andy, this morning when I learned that this was happening, you said this to a few other folks. I texted you a very profanity-ridden tirade, and I was very, very upset about this one. We've talked about the whole RMC deal, and we've talked about the different coasters that, might be good candidates. We've talked about, I don't think neither of us ever rode the original Texas Giant. Neither of us ever rode the original Rattler. You and I had both ridden the original Six Flags New England Cyclone and also the original Colossus out at Magic Mountain, and neither of us had any problems with those going, which is interesting because you haven't been a huge fan of necessarily all of the RMC Iron Horse coasters, but you are still in the camp that they are still better than what the predecessors were, even though you're not a fan of all of them. Now, neither of us either rode the original Twisted Twins either. But, it might be fair to say that maybe Storm Chaser is better than those. I don't know. And I never will know. There are a couple of wood coasters that I have said over the past several years that I would be upset if Six Flags decided to do this treatment to. One of them was the Boss. Because I thought the Boss is a very intense ride. It's fast. It's got some good forces. I really like the raw nature of the Boss. But even more so than the Boss, the one that I have always said that I was afraid of, and the one that I didn't want to see go and get the RMC treatment, and the one that I was afraid would get it, and the one that I was most afraid would get it that I didn't want to see get it was the Georgia Cyclone. And the writing has been on the wall for years. They already did the topper track on it. So that tells you right there that they weren't happy with it and that RMC has experience with the ride. So that right there tells you that this was a candidate for them once this Iron Horse thing took off. It's a ride not liked by the general public, generally speaking. It's not liked by many coaster enthusiasts. I'm in a very large minority here. There are not many people that enjoy the Georgia Cyclone. One of our friends on Facebook today said, all these people are talking about RMC Georgia Cyclone, and I don't see anyone coming out with the Save the Georgia Cyclone banner. And and I was like, oh, I'm over here. You know what I mean? I'm upset about this one. I'm not going to go into the whole profanity-ridden tirade that I went this morning, and how Six Flags sucks, and they're taking This to me was a ride that had a lot of character and it had a lot of soul to it. And even though it was a clone of the Coney Island Cyclone, a modified version of it, I felt that one had a lot of uniqueness and a lot of character to it in that back car. I thought the Georgia Cyclone was a very raw example of what a really good old school wood coaster ought to do. It throws you around. It has some good air time. It's got head choppers. It looks old. It looks kind of like it might kill you, and it beats you up and it throws you around a bit. I thought the Georgia Cyclone was a great example of what a wood coaster ought to be, and I feel like we're losing a ride that has a lot of soul and a lot of character to it. I'll let you chime in here before I kind of bring it full circle.
And that's where I'm going to take exception with you, because having ridden Georgia Cyclone on two different occasions, once, a while ago, probably back in 2012, I think it was 2012, 2013, probably 2012. I don't know, somewhere around there. It wasn't rough back then. I just thought it was a whole lot of nothing. It didn't do anything for me. Back in 2015, I went down with Dwayne to the park, and I thought it had gotten much rougher. and it still did nothing for me. And now fast forward to this past week, and having gotten the opportunity to finally ride the original Cyclone, these two rides don't compare at all to me. I loved the original Coney Island Cyclone. I thought it had great air. I thought it was super smooth, versus the Georgia Cyclone, which I thought did nothing for me. Am I surprised that Georgia Cyclone is the one to go? Actually, yeah. I am a little bit surprised because, like we had talked about before, there are much better candidates, I think, for the RMC treatment, starting with St. Louis and the Boss. And people might start throwing stuff at me, but that is a big ride. That is a ride that I think is very rough. Now, I haven't ridden it in years.
I prefer the Boss.
And I think the Boss would be a much better candidate for RMC, given what you can do with it. I'm kind of surprised Monster's not on that list up at La Ronde, although maybe they don't want to invest in that park. And along the same lines, you have Roar out at Six Flags America that is just god-awful, that you've already seen what they've done with the Joker out at Discovery Kingdom. But once again, do they want to invest in that park? I would love to see something like American Eagle at Six Flags Great America get the Iron Horse treatment. I think there's a lot to be done there as well. There's actually not, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of a single Six Flags wood coaster that I can sit here and say that I would shed a tear over them RMCing. And maybe El Toro would be the one, because I don't think it would lend itself well to RMC, but I would not be against seeing El Toro get a complete topper track treatment and keep the same layout.
Well, and El Toro the layout almost kind of lends itself to the RMC style already, with, a lot of hills and crossovers and some quick turns. I mean, you said it right there. I mean, the Georgia Cyclone is a ride that we've heard for multiple years now was on the chopping block in terms of being one of these rides. So this doesn't come as much of a surprise. One of my big issues right now that I'm trying to cope with today is the fact that they've given us less than 2 weeks notice, because I knew that I had a few open weekends in August. And when these rumors came out, I said, you know what? I'm going to try and go down in early August and try and ride the ride. I can't go these next 2 weekends. If they would have announced this 2 weeks ago, I could have gone one of the last 2 weekends to ride it again. I'm not going to be able to go down and get a last ride on it. But then I started thinking, and that was I think where a lot of my initial frustration came this morning. Because, we've talked about, New Texas Giant, nobody really liked. I mean, there were some old people who had liked it from years back. Nobody liked Rattler. Nobody really liked the New England Cyclone. This is one where, to me, I'm not sure if the RMC version is going to be better, because I don't know what they're going to do with it because of its size. Roar, they had somewhat of a spread out layout. This is very compact. It's lined by trees and midway on either side, so they're not going to be able to extend the footprint. It's going to be interesting to see what they actually have to do. And what they're going to be able to do with this. It's going to be interesting, because maybe to me, and I'm not saying this is a top 10 coaster for me. It's not. This to me is in the category of rides like American Thunder and Cornball Express and Ghost Rider. That's kind of where I have this ride on my personal list, which is, in the 20s somewhere, maybe, 120. So, I mean, we're talking top 25% here. It's to me, it's not like they're getting rid of Phoenix. It's not like they're getting rid of Voyage. This isn't one that I'm going to be completely heartbroken over for many, many years. It's a ride that I really enjoyed, maybe because I expected it to be really bad, and I actually got a tip of where to sit and sat in a really good seat and had a couple of really, really good rides on it. Georgia Cyclone in 2014 more than I rode Goliath on that trip, because it was just a surprising ride in terms of I didn't expect it to be good, and it was pretty good. So I think that's where some of my frustration comes from, is not really having the chance to go down and ride it again. But then as I started thinking about it more, I thought about it, you know what? Yourself, you've ridden it more recent, and everyone that I've seen, almost everyone is like, you know what? Good riddance. Kind of like how everyone been with Mean Streak. And I was one of those people who said, I got a really good last ride on Mean Streak. We got Jellyfish. And after I got off, I said, you know what, that was really fun. RMC it. Go ahead. And Georgia Cyclone, I don't have quite the same feeling, but I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? So many people say they don't like this ride, especially a lot of the locals who ride it all the time. And I don't know if it's maybe I just like being abused by wood coasters sometimes. I mean, some people will tell you that. But maybe I am better off just having really fond memories of really enjoying a bunch of rides on my one trip to Six Flags Over Georgia a couple of years ago. And maybe I'm just better off having really fond memories of it and really enjoying it, and maybe even going down in early August and seeing it still there, not being able to ride it, but being able to pay my respects, if you will, and still have a fond memory of it, maybe buy a T-shirt or two and see what the next chapter brings.
Yeah, and I think, with that being said, I think the more interesting idea here might be the idea that Six Flags is still working with RMC, where I kind of thought with RMC starting to work with Cedar Fair that maybe the relationship with Six Flags, that they had RMC'd and Iron Horsed everything that they wanted to. But this kind of opens that back up now, whereas before I was kind of like, well, that's probably not going to happen. Maybe RMC is going to start RMC some of these other ones that we mentioned here earlier. It's still a cheap alternative for Six Flags to invest money in a park, but not heavily invest and get a big pop out of it. That there has yet to be an RMC that the majority of people say that sucks. We've yet to see it happen. So I think until we see that happen, I think that's when we'll start seeing RMC in these parks pick and choose what to actually Iron Horse. But people are still raving about Storm Chaser. So and I think that's the worst of the bunch. So until somebody starts saying that on a big level that this thing is not a very good conversion, I think that's when we'll stop seeing the Iron Horse. But right now it looks like Six Flags is right back into it.
Yeah, so I think over the course of the day here, I've kind of started to accept it because we kind of knew this was coming, right? So I'm just gonna have to leave it be. I'll have fond memories of it, and next time I go to Six Flags Over Georgia, whether that's in a couple weeks or if it's next year or the year after, I'll always remember the Georgia Cyclone being a ride that I really, really liked, even though almost everyone else hated it and thought it was too rough. I'll remember it as a ride that had a lot of soul, had a lot of character, and was a great example of what a classic old school wood coaster ought to be. And, this is a necessary part of the industry, the evolution of the industry, inevitable change, and sometimes people don't like it. There's people who didn't like Colossus going away. There's people who didn't like, Mean Street going away. There's people who didn't like Texas Giant going away. I put me in the camp of the people who I don't like the Georgia Cyclone going away. I think it's one of those classic old school soulful wood coasters that we're losing here. But at the end of the day, there's gonna be something new and exciting. Whether or not I like it better than what it's replacing, that remains to be seen. I think most other people will, and that's what we have to look at here from a business standpoint. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a business, and if the ride isn't good enough for business, then they've got to do something about it. So may it rest in peace. I'm upset. I will get over it, and I will go ride whatever it becomes or whatever replaces it, whether it's next year or the year after that or whenever. But I'm a little upset tonight.
and who knows? They might be tearing down the damn thing and building a free fly for all we know. So
well, and that would be interesting because then people would understand how upset I am right now. That would make people understand how upset I am. Stop it.
Still A-okay.
Put your thumb down.
I won't be losing any sleep over this one. So, as always, thank you for joining us here this evening. I'm, of course, Andrew Barchak from Chicago, Illinois.
And Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And Ride On, Ride Warriors.
See you guys.